Billionaire sees a homeless girl teaching his daughter. What he did next shocked everyone. The rain was falling hard that Tuesday afternoon when everything changed. Maya sat under the broken bus stop shelter, her thin jacket soaked through, watching the expensive cars drive past without stopping. She was 14 years old, but life had already taught her more lessons than most adults ever learn. Her stomach made angry sounds, reminding her that she hadn't eaten since yesterday morning, when kind Mrs. Chen from the corner store had given her a leftover sandwich. Maya pulled her torn backpack closer, checking that her precious notebooks were still dry inside the plastic bag she had found last week. These notebooks were her only treasures, filled with math problems she solved to keep her mind sharp, stories she wrote to escape reality, and drawings of the life she dreamed about having one day. Her mother had died 2 years ago from an illness they couldn't afford to treat, and her father had disappeared long before that, leaving Maya to survive on the streets of the city. She slept in different places each night, sometimes in the park when the weather was good, sometimes in the 24-hour laundromat when the owner wasn't looking, and on the worst nights, she stayed awake walking to keep warm and safe. But through all of this hardship, Maya never stopped learning. She would sit outside the public library during the day, reading through the windows when they wouldn't let her in because she looked too dirty. She would listen to university students discussing their homework in coffee shops, memorizing everything she heard. She would solve math problems on pieces of cardboard with a stub of pencil she had found. Learning was the only thing that made her feel human, that reminded her she was more than just another invisible person that everyone walked past without seeing. That particular Tuesday, as Maya sat trying to stay dry under the leaking shelter, she noticed a girl about her age standing nearby under a huge purple umbrella. The girl wore the uniform of Pemberton Academy, the most expensive private school in the city, with its distinctive blue blazer and gold crest. She was crying, not the loud kind of crying, but the quiet kind where tears just keep falling no matter how many times you wipe them away. The girl had dropped her math textbook in a puddle, and the pages were getting ruined in the rain. Without thinking, Maya jumped up and grabbed the book, shaking off the water as best she could. "Your book," Maya said quietly, holding it out to the girl. The girl looked up, surprised to see Maya there. Her name was Emma, though Maya didn't know that yet. Emma took the book with shaking hands, and whispered thank you so softly that Maya almost didn't hear it over the rain. "You were crying," Maya said, not as a question but as a simple observation. Emma nodded, fresh tears mixing with the raindrops on her face. "I'm going to fail math, and my father is going to be so disappointed. He expects me to be perfect at everything, but I just don't understand any of it. The test is tomorrow, and I'm going to fail." Maya looked at the soggy textbook, and recognized the problems. They were algebra equations, the same kind she had been solving for fun just yesterday on the back of an old newspaper. "Which part don't you understand?" Maya asked. Emma laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. "All of it. Every single part. I'm stupid, that's the problem." Maya shook her head firmly. "You're not stupid. Math is just a language you haven't learned to speak yet. Look, can I show you something?" Emma hesitated, looking at Maya's worn clothes and dirty hands, but something in Maya's eyes made her nod. Maya picked up a stick and found a patch of dirt that was somewhat protected from the rain. She began drawing in the dirt, explaining the equation step by step in a way that no teacher ever had. She didn't use big words or complicated explanations. Instead, she told Emma to think of X like a mystery box that they needed to figure out what was inside. She showed Emma how to move the numbers around like puzzle pieces until the mystery box was all by itself on one side. "See?" Maya said, her eyes bright with excitement. "You just solved for X. You found out what was in the mystery box." Emma stared at the dirt, then at her textbook, then back at the dirt. For the first time ever, the numbers made sense. It was like someone had turned on a light in a dark room. "How do you know this?" Emma asked in amazement. "You don't even go to school, do you?" Maya's smile faded a little. "I used to, before my mom got sick. But I never stopped learning. I read everything I can find, and I practice math because numbers never lie to you or leave you or get sick. They are always the same, always reliable." Emma sat down right there in the dirt, not caring about her expensive uniform getting muddy. "Can you teach me more? Please? I'll pay you, I have money." Maya shook her head. "I don't want your money. But if you really want to learn, meet me here tomorrow after your school. Bring your homework, and I'll help you understand it." Emma's face lit up like the sun coming out from behind clouds. "Really? You'd do that for me?" Maya nodded. "Everyone deserves to understand things. Knowledge shouldn't belong only to people who can pay for it." They met the next day, and the day after that, and soon it became their daily routine. Emma would come to the bus stop after school, and Maya would teach her not just math, but science and English too. Maya had a gift for explaining things in simple ways that made even the hardest concepts seem easy. Emma's grades began to improve dramatically. Her teachers were amazed at the transformation. The girl who had been barely passing was now getting the highest scores in her class. Emma's father, Richard Thornton, noticed the change too. Richard was one of the richest men in the city, owning several technology companies and hotels. He had always pushed Emma to excel, believing that success was the most important thing in life. When Emma came home with her first perfect math score, he was suspicious. "Did you cheat?" he asked bluntly. Emma was hurt by the question but shook her head. "No, Dad. I studied really hard. I finally understand it now." Richard didn't believe her. His daughter had struggled with math for years, and sudden improvement seemed impossible. He decided to follow her one day to see what was really going on. He watched from his expensive car as Emma walked to the old bus stop instead of coming straight home. He saw her sit down next to a homeless girl, and his blood began to boil. Was his daughter buying answers from some street kid? He got out of his car and walked closer, staying hidden behind a wall to listen. What he heard changed everything. Maya was teaching Emma about photosynthesis, but she wasn't just reciting facts from a textbook. She was making it come alive, describing how plants were like little factories that turned sunlight into food, how the chlorophyll was like tiny solar panels, how the whole process was like a recipe that kept the entire world alive. Emma was asking questions, real questions that showed she understood and wanted to know more. Maya answered each one patiently, encouraging Emma to think deeper, to make connections between ideas. Richard realized with shock that this homeless girl was a better teacher than any of the expensive tutors he had hired for Emma over the years. When the lesson ended and Emma started to leave, Richard stepped out from his hiding place. Emma's face went white when she saw him. "Dad. I can explain." But Richard wasn't looking at Emma. He was staring at Maya, who had jumped to her feet, ready to run if necessary. She had learned to recognize danger, and an angry-looking rich man usually meant trouble for someone like her. "You're the one who's been teaching my daughter," Richard said. It wasn't a question. Maya lifted her chin, trying to look braver than she felt. "Yes, sir. I'm sorry if you don't want me to. I'll stop." Richard was quiet for a long moment, studying Maya. He saw the intelligence in her eyes, the worn but carefully maintained notebooks in her bag, the dignity she held despite having nothing. "Where are your parents?" he asked. "Dead," Maya said simply. "How long have you been on the streets?" 2 years, sir." "And you learned all this, how?" Maya shrugged. Libraries, when they let me in. Listening to people. Reading newspapers and any books I can find. Learning is free if you want it badly enough. Richard made a decision that would change 3 lives forever. Get in the car, both of you. Emma grabbed Maya's hand. Dad, please don't be angry. Maya's brilliant. She's the smartest person I know. Richard's expression softened slightly. I'm not angry. Just get in the car. Maya hesitated. She had learned not to trust easily, especially not rich men who could hurt her and no one would care. But Emma squeezed her hand and whispered, "It's okay. Trust me." So Maya got into the car, clutching her backpack like a shield. Richard drove them to his house, a mansion that looked like something from a magazine. Maya had walked past it before, wondering what it would be like to live somewhere with so many windows, so many rooms, so much space. The housekeeper, Mrs. Wilson, gasped when she saw Maya. "Mr. Thornton, should I call security?" "No," Richard said firmly. "Run a bath and find some of Emma's clothes that might fit her. And prepare the blue guest room." Mrs. Wilson looked confused but nodded and hurried away. Richard led Maya and Emma to his study, a room filled with more books than Maya had ever seen in one place. Her eyes went wide with wonder, and she had to force herself not to run to the shelves and start reading everything. "Sit," Richard said, gesturing to a leather chair. Maya sat carefully on the edge, afraid to get it dirty. Richard pulled out a piece of paper and wrote something on it. "This is a math problem from my company. We've been trying to optimize this algorithm for weeks. Can you solve it?" Maya looked at the problem. It was complex, involving calculus she had only read about but never formally studied. But she could see the pattern, the logic behind it. She picked up a pencil and began working, her hand moving quickly across the paper. Emma watched in amazement as Maya filled the page with numbers and symbols. 20 minutes later, Maya put down the pencil. "There's an error in your initial assumption here," she said, pointing to one section. "If you adjust this variable, the whole equation simplifies." Richard stared at the paper, then at Maya, then back at the paper. She had not only solved the problem but found an error that his team of engineers had missed. "How old are you?" he asked quietly. 14, sir." "The same as Emma? And you've had no formal education for 2 years?" "No, sir." Richard stood up and walked to the window, looking out at his perfect garden. He thought about all the money he had spent on Emma's education, all the opportunities she had been given. And here was this girl with nothing, absolutely nothing, who had still found a way to learn, to grow, to help others. "Would you like to go to school?" Richard asked, turning back to Maya. Maya's breath caught in her throat. I can't afford it, sir." "That wasn't what I asked. Would you like to go to school?" "More than anything in the world," Maya whispered, tears starting to fall. Richard nodded. "Then you'll go to Pemberton Academy with Emma? I'll handle everything, tuition, uniforms, supplies, whatever you need." Maya stared at him, unable to speak. Emma jumped up and hugged her father, then ran to hug Maya. "You'll need a place to live," Richard continued. "The blue guest room is yours if you want it. Mrs. Wilson will help you with whatever you need. You'll be part of this family." Maya finally found her voice. "Why? Why would you do this for me?" Richard was quiet for a moment. "Because you taught me something today. You showed me that brilliance isn't about what you're given, it's about what you do with what you have. You had nothing, and you still chose to help my daughter when you could have asked for money, could have taken advantage. That kind of character, combined with your intelligence, the world needs more people like you to have opportunities." Maya broke down crying then, all the fear and hunger and loneliness of the past 2 years pouring out. Emma held her while she cried, and even Richard's eyes were not quite dry. Mrs. Wilson appeared in the doorway. "The bath is ready, sir," Maya Richard said gently. "Go get cleaned up. Tomorrow, we'll go shopping for everything you need for school. But tonight, you're safe. You're home." Maya looked up at him through her tears. "I don't know how to thank you." "You already have," Richard said. "You saved my daughter's education. You showed her that learning isn't about memorizing facts, it's about understanding ideas. That's worth more than you know." The next few weeks were like a dream Maya was afraid she would wake up from. She had her own room for the first time in her life, with a real bed and clean sheets that smelled like lavender. She had a closet full of clothes that fit properly and weren't torn or stained. She had 3 meals a day, and Mrs. Wilson always made sure she ate enough, knowing how long Maya had gone without proper food. Starting at Pemberton Academy was terrifying at first. The other students whispered about her, the homeless girl that Richard Thornton had taken in. Some were curious, some were mean, but Maya had faced worse things than teenage gossip. She focused on her studies, and within a month, she was at the top of every class. The teachers were amazed. The principal called Richard to say that Maya was the most gifted student they had ever had. But what mattered more to Maya was that she and Emma had become true sisters. They studied together, laughed together, and shared secrets late at night. Emma helped Maya navigate the complex social world of prep school, and Maya helped Emma understand that she was smart and capable, not the failure she had believed herself to be. Richard watched both girls flourish, and felt something he hadn't experienced in years since his wife had died: complete happiness. He had been so focused on business, on success, on pushing Emma to be perfect, that he had forgotten what family really meant. Maya had reminded him. She brought life back into their quiet house with her excitement about learning, her gratitude for small things, her determination to help others the way she had been helped. One day, about 6 months after Maya had come to live with them, Richard found her in the library teaching a group of younger students who were struggling with their homework. She had started a free tutoring program, staying after school every day to help anyone who needed it. "You don't have to do this," Richard said. "You could be relaxing, being a normal teenager." Maya smiled at him. "This is how I want to be normal. You gave me a chance when I had nothing. The least I can do is give others a chance to understand, to learn, to believe in themselves." Richard officially adopted Maya a year later. The girl who had been nobody, who had been invisible, who had survived on the streets with nothing but her mind and her determination, was now Maya Thornton. She stood in the courthouse with her new father and sister, wearing a dress Emma had helped her pick out, holding the adoption papers that made it official. The judge asked Maya if she had anything to say. She looked at Richard and Emma, then at Mrs. Wilson, who had come to witness the moment, and said, "For so long, I thought my story was about surviving. But now I know it was about finding my way home. Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible. Thank you for believing I was worth saving." There wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. As they walked out together, a family of 3 where there had once been 2, Richard put his arm around both his daughters. "Maya," he said, "you taught me that wealth isn't measured in money. It's measured in the chances we give each other to become who we're meant to be." Maya's story spread throughout the city and beyond. The billionaire who had seen a homeless girl teaching his daughter, and had chosen to see her potential instead of her circumstances. The girl who had nothing but gave everything. The family that was built not on blood but on choice, on love, on the belief that everyone deserves a chance. Maya went on to graduate as valedictorian of Pemberton Academy. She received full scholarships to every university she applied to. She chose MIT, where she studied computer science and education, determined to find ways to make learning accessible to everyone, regardless of their circumstances. She never forgot where she came from, and she used her new position to help other kids like her, kids who were brilliant but overlooked, kids who just needed one person to believe in them. Emma became a teacher, inspired by the way Maya had taught her. She specialized in working with students who struggled, who believed they were stupid, who needed someone to show them that they could understand anything if it was explained the right way. The sisters remained best friends, talking every day even when they were in different cities. Richard expanded his companies but also started a foundation that provided education to homeless and underprivileged youth. He named it the Maya Foundation, saying that it was meant to find and nurture the hidden Mayas of the world, the brilliant minds that society overlooks. He often said that taking Maya in wasn't charity, it was the best investment he ever made, not in terms of money, but in terms of what it taught him about what really matters in life. Mrs. Wilson, who had watched it all happen, would tell anyone who would listen about the day a wet, hungry, homeless girl had walked into their house and changed everything. She brought love back into this home, Mrs. Wilson would say. She reminded us all that family isn't about who you're born to, it's about who chooses to love you and who you choose to love back. Years later, when Maya graduated from MIT with highest honors, she stood at the podium to give her graduation speech. She looked out at the crowd and saw Richard and Emma in the front row, beaming with pride. She thought about the girl she had been, sitting under that leaking bus stop, teaching another lost girl in the dirt. I want to tell you about the day my life changed, Maya began. I was 14, homeless, and hungry. But I met a girl who needed help with math, and I taught her what I knew. Her father saw us, and instead of seeing a homeless girl corrupting his daughter, he saw potential. He saw a person. That act of seeing, really seeing someone for who they could be rather than what they appear to be, that can change the world. She continued, we all have the power to be that person who sees. Who looks at someone struggling and asks not what's wrong with them but what help do they need. Who remembers that every person we pass on the street, every person we ignore or judge or dismiss, has a story, has potential, has dreams that just need one chance to come true. My adoptive father, Richard Thornton, gave me that chance. But more importantly, he taught me to give that chance to others. That's what education really is, not just learning facts, but learning to see the potential in everyone, including ourselves. The audience erupted in applause, but Maya wasn't finished. Today, I'm announcing the launch of a new program through the Maya Foundation. We're creating learning centers in every major city where anyone, regardless of age or circumstance, can come to learn for free. Where homeless kids can take hot showers and get clean clothes while they study. Where adults who never got to finish school can come back and try again. Where knowledge is truly free and available to all. Because everyone deserves to understand, to learn, to grow. Everyone deserves to be seen. The program was a massive success. Within 5 years, there were Maya centers in 50 cities. Thousands of people who had been written off by society found new hope, new skills, new futures. Many of them went on to college, to careers they had never dreamed possible. Some became teachers themselves, passing on what they had learned. The girl who had once taught algebra in the dirt had created a movement that changed countless lives. Richard, now older and grayer, would visit the centers regularly. He would sit in the back of classrooms, watching volunteer teachers explain complex ideas in simple ways, watching students' faces light up with understanding. He would think about that rainy day when he had followed Emma and discovered Maya, and he would marvel at how one decision to see potential instead of problems had led to all of this. Emma married a fellow teacher, and they had 2 children. She named her daughter Maya, after the sister who had shown her that she was smart, that she was capable, that she was worthy. Little Maya grew up hearing stories about her aunt, about how kindness and intelligence could overcome any obstacle, about how learning was the greatest gift you could give or receive. The original Maya never married, dedicating her life to education and innovation. She developed learning apps that were free for anyone to use, wrote textbooks that explained things simply without talking down to students, and traveled the world speaking about the importance of accessible education. But she always came home to Richard and Emma, to Mrs. Wilson's cooking, to the house where she had been given a second chance at life. One day, 20 years after that first meeting at the bus stop, Maya stood in the rain at that same spot. The old shelter had been replaced with a proper covered area, with benches and lights, paid for by the Maya Foundation. She stood there remembering the scared, hungry girl she had been, the girl who had nothing but hope and determination. A young boy approached, maybe 12 years old, clearly homeless, clutching a worn backpack just like she once had. He looked at the math book Maya was holding, and asked shyly, "Miss, could you help me understand fractions? I want to learn, but I don't go to school." Maya smiled, sat down on the bench, and patted the spot next to her. "Of course," she said. "Let me tell you about fractions. Think of them like pieces of a pie." As she began to teach, she felt Richard's presence somehow, his spirit of seeing potential where others saw problems. She felt Emma's encouragement, the bond of sisters who had found each other in the most unlikely way. She felt the weight and joy of all the lives she had touched and all the lives that had touched hers. The boy listened intently, his eyes brightening as understanding dawned. When the lesson ended, Maya handed him a card. "This is the address of the nearest Maya Center. Go there tomorrow. Tell them Maya sent you. They'll help you with everything, food, clothes, showers, and all the learning you can handle." The boy looked at the card, then at her. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." Maya smiled, remembering asking Richard the same question so many years ago. "Because someone once helped me when I needed it most. He saw me when I was invisible. Now it's my turn to see you. You're not just a homeless kid. You're a student. Your potential waiting to be unlocked. You matter." The boy's eyes filled with tears, and Maya knew his life had just changed, just as hers had changed that rainy day when a billionaire had seen a homeless girl teaching his daughter, and had decided to do something that shocked everyone. He had chosen to care. As Maya walked away, she thought about the title people often gave her story. Billionaire sees a homeless girl teaching his daughter. What he did next shocked everyone. But she knew the real shock wasn't just what Richard had done. The real shock was how rare it was for people to truly see each other, to look past circumstances to find the human being underneath. The real shock was how one act of kindness could ripple outward, touching thousands of lives, creating a legacy of learning and love that would last for generations. Maya had been homeless, but she had never been hopeless. She had been poor in money but rich in determination. And when someone finally saw that richness, when someone finally believed in her, she had taken that belief and multiplied it 1,000-fold, spreading it to everyone she met. That's the power of being seen, of being valued, of being given a chance. That's what Richard Thornton had understood that day in the rain, and that's what Maya spent her life helping others understand. The Maya Foundation grew into one of the largest educational non-profits in the world. Richard lived to see it help over 1 million people before he passed away peacefully at age 85, with Maya and Emma by his side. His last words were, "I thought I was saving you, Maya, but you saved us. You saved all of us." At his funeral, thousands of people came to pay their respects. Many of them were people whose lives had been changed by the Maya Foundation, people who had been given second chances, third chances, as many chances as they needed to succeed. They told stories of how Richard's decision to help one homeless girl had indirectly helped them, had shown them that change was possible, that circumstances didn't have to be permanent. Maya spoke at the funeral, her voice steady despite her tears. Richard Thornton was known as a billionaire, a successful businessman, a philanthropist. But to me, he was the man who chose to be my father when I had no one. He was the man who looked at a dirty, hungry, desperate girl and saw a daughter. He taught me that wealth isn't about what you have, it's about what you give. And he gave me everything, not just money or comfort, but love, belief, and the chance to become who I was meant to be. He didn't just change my life. He made it possible for me to change others' lives. That's his true legacy, not the companies he built or the money he made, but the love he showed and the chances he gave. Emma stood with her, and together they announced that they were expanding the Maya Foundation to include a new program, the Richard Thornton Scholarship Fund, which would provide full university scholarships to homeless and foster youth who showed academic promise. Our father believed in investing in people, Emma said. This fund will ensure that his belief continues to change lives for generations to come. Today, if you visit any Maya center, you'll see a photo on the wall of three people standing together, Richard in his expensive suit, Emma in her school uniform, and Maya in her first new dress, all smiling at the camera on the day the adoption was finalized. Below the photo is a simple message that captures everything: family isn't about where you come from. It's about where you choose to go together. The story of the billionaire who saw a homeless girl teaching his daughter continues to inspire people around the world. It reminds us that every person we pass on the street has potential waiting to be discovered. It reminds us that kindness can change the trajectory of a life. It reminds us that sometimes the best investment we can make is in another human being. It reminds us that shocking the world doesn't require grand gestures or massive wealth, it just requires seeing people for who they really are and caring enough to help. Maya, now in her 40s, still teaches. She still visits that bus stop on rainy days, looking for other lost souls who need to be found. She still believes that education is the greatest equalizer, that knowledge should be free, that everyone deserves a chance to learn and grow. She carries Richard's memory with her in everything she does, hearing his voice when she makes decisions, feeling his pride when another student succeeds, remembering his love when the work gets hard. Emma remains her closest friend, her sister in every way that matters. They talk every day, their children grow up together, and they continue the work their fathers started, the work of seeing potential where others see problems, of giving chances to those who have been written off, of building families not from blood but from choice and love. The story ends where it began, with rain falling on a bus stop, with a girl who has everything teaching a girl who has nothing, with a moment of connection that changes multiple lives forever. But it also continues, in every Maya center, in every scholarship recipient, in every person who reads this story, and decides to really see the people around them. The title Billionaire sees a homeless girl teaching his daughter. What he did next shocked everyone has become more than just a headline. It has become a reminder that we all have the power to shock the world with kindness, to change lives with compassion, to build families from love rather than law. Richard Thornton's wealth gave him the means to help Maya, but it was his humanity that gave him the wisdom to see her worth. And Maya's intelligence gave her the ability to teach, but it was her generosity that made her share her knowledge even when she had nothing else. Together, they proved that the most shocking thing in our world isn't scandal or tragedy, it's when people choose to love without condition, to help without expectation, to see without judgment. That's what Richard did when he saw Maya teaching Emma in the rain. That's what Maya did when she chose to trust and accept help. That's what Emma did when she embraced Maya as a sister. And that's what thousands of people have done since, inspired by their story to look closer, care more, and change lives one person at a time. The homeless girl became a renowned educator. The struggling student became an inspiring teacher. The billionaire became a true father. And the world became a little bit better because three people chose to see each other not as statistics or stereotypes, but as family. That's the real shock, that love that profound, that transformative, that unconditional is possible. And it all started with a simple question in the rain: which part don't you understand? The answer changed everything. Because when we take the time to help each other understand, whether it's algebra or acceptance, mathematics or mercy, equations or empathy, we don't just solve problems. We save lives. We build families. We change the world. And that will never stop being shocking in the most beautiful way possible.